It's time for a Matcha Talk.
Assalamu alaikum.
I am in my very, very comfy spot. I actually got a new setup. I'm not on my weird rolly thing. And unfortunately, you guys cannot see it. This one is just a podcast. But Samia, what about you? Are you in your comfy spot today?
Yes, I am. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, the weather is chilly, so I'm wearing finally my little sweatshirt, which is rare here, right? We have probably a week to wear to a sweatshirt, so I'm enjoying that process. And it is making everything feel cozy.
We are just beginning. Winter has begun here, so I'm looking forward to all the comfy things I'm going to be wearing. But I
Yeah.
love it. Last time you were in a new place in the video, and I'm in my new place. Like we like to change things up on Matcha Talk. Welcome to our show.
We're moving up in life, Summer. We're moving up.
We're moving up and doing bigger and better things. So we are going to be talking about an interview that you saw or heard. And
Yeah, David Letterman. We're going to talk about that.
And then we have some shocking news about Dave Chappelle, which I didn't know.
It's only shocking for Summer. I think she's probably the last person in the world who knows about that news.
Okay, I don't think so. Okay, so y'all better back me up on this. And then another thing, speaking of worldwide people who know Dave Chappelle, in case, well, I know some of you know, but in case no one else knows, we actually have listeners from around the world, which is it's news to me.
It's the coolest thing ever.
It's fantastic. And now this is only from the last week. So this is kind of our bit of comment caffeine today is I'm making it this because it's just amazing. We have listeners from Morocco, Turkey, Germany, Austria, Canada, Denmark, Romania, Singapore, Brunei, Netherlands, good old Pakistan, Nigeria, and Qatar. Like, what?
We're not even mentioning our main. Most of you guys are from the UK and the United States and Canada. Well, you mentioned Canada?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm sure we have listeners.
No, those two are the big ones, but those one we really wanted to highlight because how cool is that?
That is amazing. And another thing I wanted to say is how come I didn't know about you guys? I want to hear from our brothers and sisters around the world. I want to know what is interesting to you. Sometimes we talk, one of our previous episodes, we were talking about Hollywood and Bollywood. I'm sure y'all have something else going on. We had another question one time about if you would like your country to be pronounced in how your people pronounce your country's names. I mean, I want to know, Romania, is that how you say it? Singapore, is that how you say it? Is that how you want the world to say your name?
Yeah, I would love to have those people like you guys in Netherlands or Singapore or Austria. Leave us a review on Matcha Talk on your podcasting platform on Apple Podcasts. Let us know why you listen to us. Why do you love it? What keeps you coming back? And stuff like that. So, yeah, we want to highlight you.
Absolutely. And then if you don't have a way to leave a review or you're not into that, I can relate. I'm sorry, I can relate. You can definitely use Instagram, hashtag Matcha Talk. Let us know. You are always welcome to use Instagram to answer our questions or leave the review. You can always say salam. You click on that on the description or the info, and then on our YouTube videos as well. I think one of the questions that we had was on our YouTube video. So there are a lot of platforms and I am just amazed. So just
It's a global Matcha Talk family.
exactly. I just wanted to give everyone a moment and just thank you guys for tuning in and listening to us. But we want to listen to you too. So definitely if you have a minute or two, leave a review, leave a comment. We want to know what you guys think and call us out on our uncultured selves every once in a while. I'm sure we say some stuff.
Speaking of all the people and the episodes that we pull out, we actually have a really interesting episode coming up. Next week, we're going to have our first guest.
Do you know the date?
Yeah, it is the last day of November. So November 31st, that's our Monday. And we're going to have a really cool, exciting episode coming out. because we have some guests coming in, but they're just not any guest, and the episode is just not any episode.
Whoop, whoop.
It's a collaboration with the Modern Skeptics, which are podcasters, and they have a bookram on Instagram, which they host every month. So every beginning of the month, they're like, we're going to read this book. Everybody reads the book, and then in the end, we discuss it. So we're actually making a little bit of a collaboration there. They're going to hop in over here in our podcast on Matcha Talk, two of them. And we're going to talk about the book called My Past is a Foreign Country by Zeba Telkhani. You can find that information on our Instagram, actually, or Facebook. So yeah, we're going to talk about that book. It's not going to be a book discussion. I'm going to appear on their podcast, on their Instagram live on November 31st as well. And we're going to discuss the book. But they're going to come over here and we're going to talk about a personal connection with this book, because the tagline for the book is "A Muslim Feminist Find Herself." And there are some really good topics where I think we can have a really good matcha talk type discussion.
So a lot of the topics in that book are the kind of things that we talk about in Matcha Talk. We like to get into the details and make that personal connection sometimes. So I think it'll be a really fun collaboration. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from the sisters or part of the sisters from their podcast, from their team.
Looking forward to that. So again, join us on that episode on November 31st. Inshallah, we'll catch you over there. So we're Summer today. So let's go back to our podcast episode today. And we always ask each other what happens, and then you tell us what happened. So Summer, what happened?
So this is something that didn't happen to me necessarily recently, but I was thinking about it again. It was on my mind. So we had mentioned in one of our previous episodes when we had our energy fluctuations, and one of the things I mentioned how I coped with that to keep up the deen. You know, sometimes it's physically difficult to do certain things, so you're just laying there saying, "Oh, I'm not feeling so productive. What can I do?" I used to put on YouTube videos or listen to lectures by sheikhs and things. One of the lectures I heard at that time was a sheikh. He was talking about laziness, or I guess the flip side of that same coin is productivity. So he said, as Muslims, there is no time for laziness, which immediately I was, I love procrastination. What is this? So, but what he said, and is true, and I think it's a good point. We should, especially during these times where we're quarantined and at home, I think it's difficult for us to do, but I think we should aim to do it. And he said we have no guarantee of tomorrow. You know, Islam really says and hones.
Yeah, life can end at any moment.
And this is just, no matter what religion you are. Exactly, no matter what religion you are or lack of or anything, at the end of the day, life can end at any moment. So one thing that he focused on was making the most of the time that we do have. So on that end, do not be lazy. So obviously, carpe diem, don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today, all of that. But also as Muslims, he said, this is one of the things we have already, the 5 prayers. We already have our obligations to do. So there's that aspect. But also we have time throughout the day beyond that. Don't spend it idly. Make sure you are maximizing the time that you do have on this one day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that actually reminded me. I read the book by Productive Muslim. I heard it's a really good audiobook as well. And he talked about in our tradition, we have like shuyukhs, right? Like scholars. And they've done insane amount of work in a very small amount of time. So there are some scholars who have published like really stellar amount of books. And if you look at the time period, you're like, how is it possible that they were to do that? I mean, they had to be writing all the time. And he said, he always talks about using the barakah in your day. So he would say, obviously seize the barakah moments that we have like in the morning time between Asr and Maghrib. These are very barakah filled times. And also just having dhikr into your life, which also adds barakah all the time. And so that was really cool too. So take, whatever you do, you're adding that Right, you're doing everyday things is fine, but then as Muslims, we have this spiritual realm that we can access and have even more time and ability to do the things that we want to do.
That's exactly it. And even not necessarily spiritually, but there's just so much time and so much opportunity to don't be wasteful about it, you know? Spend that time doing even stuff with the dunya, you know, anything to do with the world, the life. Don't just sit there staring at the TV screen for 3 hours straight, unless you're watching a Bollywood movie, like, okay. But, you know, don't make that.
Or Lord of the Rings. I'll give that for Lord of the Rings too. Don't listen to us. This is not a fiqh podcast, so please do not listen to us. We're not telling you how to live your spiritual life.
Yeah, I was about to say, Lord of the Rings, that's a worthy 3 hours you're going to spend on that. Definitely don't take your fiqh and religion from us. But no, so basically, yeah, just spend your time in a wise manner. Just spend your time doing stuff. And I was thinking about it because, especially during quarantine, you're hearing so many people just staying at home. I don't know what to do. And I'm being a couch potato for those who are able to stay home. It's hard for them to do other things to be productive because they don't know how to do non-work things at home. So I don't know. I was just thinking about it and I thought it would be fun to remind everyone, just be productive. Don't be lazy. Seize the day.
To the best of your ability. I always remember our fellow chronic ill sisters and brothers, and I'm like, to the best of your ability. It's all right. Because there's this also conversation happening. They're like, oh, so we have been in quarantine for 10 months. I don't know how long that has been. Seems like 10 months. Or 11. We have been quarantined for so long. What have you accomplished? What have you done? And they share, they've created courses, online courses, have done this for their business, and have taken all these classes. And I'm like, hang on, y'all. Not everyone has the means and the ability to do the things that you're saying. Because some of them are stuck with 5 kids at home and they're just trying to just make sure everyone eats,
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Absolutely. They're just trying to make it work. No, fair enough. Fair enough. But we talked about, different ways to be productive. There are passive and active ways. So, hey.
Seriously, I do notice that when I have a new podcast that I love listening to, it's by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and it's called Sacred Text Messages. And he takes the ayah of a Quran or something, and then he just drops wisdoms in your ear. That's what he does. And I find I just love every time it comes, and I'm like, oh my god, a podcast here, and I find ways to listen to it. Last time it was literally at 1 a.m, and I couldn't sleep, and I was doing my laundry, right? And I was listening to it. But I find when I'm listening to something like that, when I'm listening to something, even if an audiobook anyway, it's good. But I find when I'm listening to something that's spiritually uplifting, the time just seems more heavy. It just seems more as if I was able to accomplish more than I would otherwise.
Yeah.
It just seems better.
Yeah. And I think I've noticed that I feel better. At the end of the day, I go to sleep tired, but in a good way. You feel like you've done a lot that day, so it takes a mental toll as well, even if you're just listening, because your mind goes on a journey, if that makes sense. Your mind goes to places it never has gone before. So you might not be physically hiking in the woods, but your mind sure has. It's been working on overdrive, and that's, I think, also being productive. I definitely count listening to something and using your mind as being productive. I mean, you don't have to physically sit there and take notes necessarily. I mean, you probably could gain a lot by doing that. But even if you don't, if you're just listening, just thinking about stuff that's important, meditating is a type of productivity. All of that.
Yeah. So conscious use of your time to the best of your ability. I like that. That was a really good topic.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Actually, it reminded me. Well, actually, we can make a connection with the main topic for the day, which was the David Letterman. I always call him David. He's Dave Letterman. Interviews. He has this episodes, right, on Netflix, and he's on season 3 or something. I've only watched 3 of them. I know he had Obama in one, and then I don't know, there were other 2 or whatever. And so this one, he had Dave Chapelle come in, and we watched the Dave Chapelle one, and then I saw it, related videos. It showed Shahrukh Khan with David Letterman. No, I think it is David Letterman.
I was about to say, I was like, are you sure it's not David? You saying Dave?
Yeah, I think it was Dave Chappelle, David Letterman. I
That's what
just
it
got
is.
mixed up in my
That's
brain.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it popped up and I was like, what? David Letterman has an interview with Shahrukh Khan? And so we watched that as well. And I just like have things to share about those two interviews because those two are really successful people. And they both are Muslims, actually, right? The Shahrukh Khan is a Muslim. And that was a big news for Summer.
I did not know how many of y'all were in the same boat because I had no idea Dave Chappelle was Muslim. I listened to his comedies and he's funny and is great. I mean, I'm pretty. I think he does use curse words, so take that as you will. But
Yeah, he could be quite vulgar in his comedy, unfortunately.
yeah, but I know him and I'm familiar with him, his work in terms of comedy, stand-ups that he's done. And so it was just a shock that he's a Muslim and that's not a huge thing. Which on the one hand, way to normalize being Muslim. But also, he's a Muslim celebrity. Can we own that? Can we own that?
Yeah, we should totally own it. We should own it. He's our brother. And actually, that in the David Letterman interview, Dave Chappelle, he's asked that question. So you're a Muslim, right? And he's like, oh yeah. And he tells this story, like a little bit of how he came up to it, and he just speaks so beautifully about it. He talks about, and maybe we can actually link a little YouTube clip of it if we can find it in the description. But he talks about that. He says and he's like, such a beautiful religion and it's very spiritual and what that means to him. And I was like, you know what? We are so quick to pass judgments on people. Like we're so quick to pass judgments. I mean, Allah knows his internal, but we see his external. External is not what we would say that is observably, if that's the word, practicing. And he says that. He's like, I'm a Muslim. I'm not good at it, but I'm a Muslim. And I was like, okay, that's a realist statement anyone has said about being Muslim in a long time. I'm not really good at it, but I am one.
Own it. Yeah.
And so it was just, and just the way that he spoke about it, I was like, there was just so much.
I just want to take a moment here. I've never seen the David Letterman interview thing. I've heard a lot about it. You said it's on Netflix, right? It's a series.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Yeah, I've never heard about it. I don't know. I mean, I've seen his late show. Was it Late Night Tonight Show? Whatever. I've seen the show that he has done before, on TV. But those are obviously different kinds of interviews. It's a completely different vibe, but also there is a particular agenda to those. These are different. And so I don't know. So tell me a little bit about what those interviews are, and then what was the thing that you want to say about it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I said a little bit about the Dave Chappelle one. I just really loved how he was so proud of his faith and how sometimes we're so quick to judge people. And we're like, yeah, but, he's not, it's not a very good Muslim or, But then sometimes he will speak in certain ways and you're like, I think they get the essence that maybe like I haven't gotten.
So
just the way that they can present it,
So does Letterman ask those kinds of questions? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this, I mean, I wasn't really too much into the night shows or whatever they're called, late night shows. I'm not really into them. So maybe I've seen clips here and there. But those shows are meant to be comedic and they have performances and they have people showing up and whatever.
It's lighthearted.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe that would be a good way to say that. But on Netflix, his thing is one-on-one conversation for like an hour, 50 minutes to an hour. And he asks all sorts of questions about a person. And they have like clips of them. And usually sometimes they're sitting down, facing each other in front of an audience. And then they also have other B-rolls where they're actually like outside and they're showing some things. And so it's like a really deep personal conversation.
So it's about,
and it takes different turns.
So it's about kind of like their history, who they are, where they come from, how they
about
ended
them.
up.
He does the research. Yeah, he does the research and he's like, I have all these questions. And it's like a really, I mean, if I could get our Matcha Talk to that level, I think we'll be like the best podcast on the planet because that's exactly the vibe it is. It's like, oh, let me get you. I mean, the interviews that I've seen. There are other ones too, which I'm like, why would you interview those people? But that's his prerogative. I don't watch them. So I just watched the ones that I like. And this was one of them I was really intrigued by, and I was so happy that I watched it.
Yeah. I wouldn't have even thought about Dave Chappelle. I mean, I would have I want to know. I have seen some interviews of his, not in-depth interviews necessarily. I don't know. I've seen clips and videos
Oh,
here and there of
but
his
even his
interviews, but
comedy, like his comedy is thoughtful.
it is. That's the thing that I enjoy about it. There are some, okay, total, just diatribe, but a little bit. But I've seen different comedies. One where it's very surface level. Hey, we're just here for these 5 minutes just to make you forget about life for a second, right? And then there is that comedy where there's a clear agenda. They want you to think about something in a very different way. And so they kind of take you on this journey. It's like an hour-long journey of, hey, we're gonna totally break down what you think this thing is, what this structure means, or this existing, thing in life, and just completely shift the way you think about it, and that one, I think that's good comedy, because even though it's comedy, you're lighthearted, but the subject itself, what's actually happening is this, just undermining the human consciousness and just saying, hey, think about it though, like for real, think about it. And that's the comedy. Dave Chappelle's comedy, I think, definitely leans towards that second aspect. Not every time necessarily, but the fact that he can go deeper like that, the fact that he aims to do that, I think that's super. You don't see that everywhere, and I like it when I see
Exactly.
it.
No, I think his recent ones, especially like ever since he made a comeback, I mean, openly, right? Like, I don't know the small ones that he does or whatever, but the ones that are really big, I feel like he always has a message. He's not just there speaking, he has a message. And he did an SNL thing with the recent election celebrations.
Did
He did
he?
that, and
I didn't know.
yeah, he did a really good monologue. In the beginning, he showed up and he did a really, really good monologue, and I was like, oh my god, this man. Like it's good because you need people like that in every field, because people don't necessarily seek out good knowledge or wisdom, and they're like, oh well, let me talk to this person who's like deeply like thoughtful individual. No, they're just switching over SNL, and in a comedic way, you're being, like you said, you're being told something that you wouldn't hear otherwise in the same field. And it's nice, it's
Right.
a different perspective. It's like, oh wait a minute, oh yeah, he's right, like, oh, he's totally on point about that. So it's really cool.
That is, man. That's super, yeah. And then okay, so you've told me, let's get back to it. You've told me a little about the interview with Dave Chappelle. What about with Shahrukh Khan? What was that? What was that
Yeah,
like?
so I was actually quite excited because I don't know anything about Shahrukh Khan except for like what 3 or 4 movies that we've seen of his. And I know that he's obviously like a pretty huge Bollywood actor.
And that's putting it lightly.
Yeah. In the clips they had on Letterman show thingy, he would just every day he comes out of his house, not out of his house, but like he stands on top of the walls around his house. I don't know what to say that. And there's like scores of people just there waiting for him to show up. It's like a queen. Oh, let me see your face. And then they all just go crazy. And he has like barbed wire fence around his house and everything. But he's standing up there waving to people and stuff. And I was like, this guy, I mean, he has something, right? He has something to the Bollywood community, and not only maybe like Indian community in general. Pakistan knows about it. Everybody knows. My husband knows about him. So it was a pretty big deal. And I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to an interview, but I haven't seen that much interviews from him. I wanted to know
Same.
more. Yeah, there was one graduation ceremony. What is that called? Like when they give a talk on the graduation.
Graduation speech or something.
Yeah, there was one that I heard, and it was actually very good. And I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to this interview, with him. But I was, just watching Dave Chappelle and then switching over to Shahrukh Khan within the same time frame, I was really underwhelmed. And I don't know if that's a Desi thing, what it was, but he refused to go deeper into any of his answers. I mean, literally, you know what we
What?
talk about? We don't like surface level conversations. All that happened in that 50 minutes of his interview was surface level conversations. And he would just, I'm like, David
No.
Letterman is a comedian, right? Like, he is a
Yeah.
comedian by profession. Shahrukh Khan is an actor, but he kept on joking the whole time. I'm like, you're not the comedian here. You're the actor here. Why are you joking this whole time? It was really weird.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, I felt like, some of the jokes could be like dad jokes, how they say in a Desi culture, dad jokes, or like American culture dad jokes, where it's like, and I think I experienced that in our elder community as well, in Pakistan ones. Like, I don't think people generally go deep.
I don't
I mean, is that right?
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. And I don't know if it's a Desi thing or an age thing or what thing. I don't know what kind of thing it is. But that's what we were talking about in that one episode one time. People, not everyone likes to talk about deeper things.
Then don't show up in an interview for 50 minutes. What is he going to ask you? How old are your kids? He's going to ask you more questions than that.
Right. But that's what I'm sad about is the fact that you say that you've seen an interview of Shahrukh Khan where he has talked about other things, I mean, it was a speech that probably could have been written by someone else, but it's still sad that he's not. And the thing is, especially when someone else of non-Western descent comes onto a show like that, David Letterman has a name. He has recognition. A lot of people watch it, listen to it, And for someone else to come in and not I don't know, and not show up, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I didn't feel like he was there.
That's the thing, is sad to hear that, and especially from Charlotte. Like, he is big. He's Brad Pitt, I guess, Tom Cruise. He's one of those of Bollywood.
That's what he said himself. He was like, one time he was given the title that he's a Tom Cruise of India or something.
He
like
is.
He's a pretty big actor. I mean, I understand this idea. A person might want to, maybe as a huge introvert and they're guarded, and I understand that. We did an episode recently. Let's Get Real. We were asking questions to each other. And, you were like, I don't want to go too deep, but, you still went to a comfortable level where you were okay with it. I'm not going to ask you, and no one's going to ask you to. There was a moment in Dave Chapelle, actually, where David Letterman asked him a question repeatedly. And he was like, yeah, well, what about, why did you really leave? Like, what happened? What was that conversation? Right. Dave Chapelle didn't want to go. He was like, okay, I'm going to ask you this one last time, and then we're going to move away from it. But he was still able to skirt it in a way, right? Like, it was clear he doesn't want to go there. And David Letterman was like, okay, he doesn't want to go there. And he moved on.
Right.
In this one, I felt like he didn't want to go anywhere. He just wanted to stay on top. And, a lot of the times people have like a defense mechanism and they laugh, they make jokes. That's a defense mechanism. You don't want to talk about something, so you joke about it or whatever. And I was like, is that like his whole life? Like, I feel after this interview that how old he is. Like, I didn't know how old he was. Like, mashallah, the dude has wrinkles and stuff. And you never see that in movies. I don't think you can ever know who Shahrukh Khan is. Like, no one will know who he is except for his people really close to him, because I think he's so guarded.
Man, that's a shame. I wonder if any of it has to do with like a culture thing, because like you said, sometimes, for example, it just came to me, some people react if they're feeling, I don't know, I can't think of the word, but if they're feeling attacked or if they're feeling uncomfortable or if they're feeling in one particular way, their reaction would be to laugh it off, right? But I wonder if the way that Letterman was putting the questions, or the kind of questions that were being asked, were culturally to Shahrukh Khan not to something he's comfortable with, maybe.
Not at all. They were not difficult questions. They were questions about his parents, questions about how he started movies.
Maybe that is something that people don't usually ask actors in India.
No, I get one or two questions where you're like, yeah, I don't feel okay with this. But all of the questions in 50 minutes, and not one instant where you're like, okay, let me share something that that would help me make a connection with people. Like, there was none. His questions were not inappropriate. It was basic questions that everyone is asked. And I think he probably stayed on that level. Maybe he had other questions too. But I think he stayed on that level when he was like, okay, this person I'm interviewing is not even interested in deep questions. So let me just stay on these levels, and see how deep he can go. But if he pushed a little bit, Shahrukh Khan was like, joke time, or, oh, look at this story time, or, and say something where the audience will go crazy.
That's what I mean, though. That's what I mean. Like, look, he's a performer his whole life from his waking moment. Listen, Dave Chappelle doesn't get up and have a sea of faces to say hi to in the morning. That's Shahrukh Khan's life. What I'm trying to say,
Dude, even Jay-Z had an interview on there and he answered more questions than Shahrukh Khan did.
what I'm trying to say is that we downplay the cultural differences a lot. And we don't give it the credit and we don't understand how important that kind of stuff is. So I'ma just, on the one hand, yes, we do as a people have issues with going deeper. I get that might be a cultural thing. But I also want to say that the way entertainers respond in India, and I've seen a few interviews. I'm not gonna say I've seen a lot. I know that life. No, I don't. I've seen a few, just a handful, and the way that they respond, it is kind of still an entertainment thing. It's work still, and it always is, but they're still showing up to work. They have a particular way to respond, particular kinds of questions or particular kinds of responses. Like you said, story time. It's maybe a lot of, and this I have noticed, people like to talk about their stories a lot. And, and when you're talking about, family and people from our culture. So maybe that's one aspect of things. I'm not saying necessarily that, Shah Khan is completely it's all about the cultural differences. He's not understanding of the Western culture necessarily or not comfortable in the Western culture. But I am saying maybe part of it could be that, yeah, he doesn't want to go deep. But I think part of it is also, I wonder how many hour-long interviews he's done outside of India to be able to say, hey, okay, maybe this is the norm in other interviews.
I don't know.
To be able to gauge the audience reaction. Audiences are different in different countries, by the way, too.
No, obviously.
And the kind of topics that are able to fly in certain places don't fly everywhere else.
I know what you're saying. Obviously, culture differences, etc. But I think people can go a little bit deeper in any way. People can be like, oh, let me not make a joke about my nose. Literally. Let me say something else, which might actually answer the question that he's asking me. I'm not criticizing Shahrukh Khan at all. I'm not saying he's a bad person or whatever. But I'm definitely going to say David Letterman did not cross any cultural boundaries and ask questions, which would be like, why are you asking that? He was very conscious, and I think he did a really good interview from his perspective. But I feel as a person who was being interviewed, Shahrukh Khan was not in the business to be like, okay, I want to answer questions. I don't know, what was it? I don't know, cultural stuff, maybe his own personality stuff. But, in Pakistan, there's this lady now who's doing these like Oprah type feeling of shows. Samina Pirzada, the actress.
Yeah, she's always done good shows.
She has that sit down experience where she sits down with someone and asks them questions. And I've seen clips of those, and they really, it seems like, okay, yeah, you get to know about that person. They have like good conversations to a certain level in those things. So it's not like we're not completely incapable of engaging with each other on that level. I was just surprised with this interview, with that platform, just the way that it was. I was, even like me and Hamza, we left and we were like, why is he doing this? Like, we didn't understand. I didn't understand. And in the end, I was like, okay, I think maybe this is just a cultural thing where, that's just the way. He doesn't want to. He wants to keep some things. He just wants to have just a little opening, and that's all he's comfortable with. Everything else is off limits for him, and that's just who he is. And maybe that's why he is such a big figure, because you can put in whatever idea you want on this guy because you don't know who he really is.
Right. Hey, this is an opportunity. Hashtag Matcha Talk. What do y'all, we have so many cultures, so many different kinds of things. Maybe someone had a different viewpoint. I really think it's a culture thing. I really think it's a culture thing. And it could be kind of like to the point that you're saying here that, that's who he is. That's who Shahrukh Khan, the actor, is.
He said that.
He is an enigma.
Oh, wait, he said that.
He is an enigma.
He said something. He was like, I am a person who plays Shahrukh Khan. He said something like that. Because they were talking about how he shows up in front of everyone every day and he goes out and greets them every single day. And he was like, how do you do that? And he was like, well, I play him. And I was like,
that's what I mean. Like the fact that you are an actor and that big of an actor and you're always in the limelight like that, I don't know. I really think that's what it is. Shahrukh Khan is an enigma, A, but B, that's who actors are. They're not supposed to have that history, or they're not supposed to go that deep, or they're not supposed
That's
to,
not true. I wouldn't say they're not supposed to. That's not true. I disagree
or
with
the
that
way
because
that they respond is lighthearted. It's never supposed to be that serious.
who are you saying supposed to be? Like who's making these rules that you're just who's supposed to be? Like who said that?
In terms of, well, I'm not saying that I'm just sharing my theory in the interviews that I've seen, smaller interviews that I've seen about Bollywood actors in Bollywood or in India, not in the Western culture. So in their own culture, their interviews are very still entertaining, not necessarily let's talk about my issue. Sometimes they talk about real issues, but not necessarily their own issues or personal just life. They talk about big things, sure, and they talk about it on a deeper level, but it's not necessarily about themselves.
When you see
But
these,
I don't know, again, how many of those kinds of interviews are there in the culture.
when you see these nighttime shows, sometimes they invite a guest. Like I've seen Malala show up there, and there's a purpose. And sometimes they show up because they want to promote a movie or promote a book they've written. It's always like a promotional
Exactly.
trip.
Purposeful.
The night
Yes.
shows one. But I mean, everybody
And then
knows.
hold on, you just said that Samina Pirzada is a new one with the Oprah feel, right?
I don't know. I'm not familiar, but I'm saying what I meant to say by that was that we are capable of having such conversations. It's not like we're not capable. Culturally, we're totally blocked
No,
off.
no, no. And I agree. I agree. And what I'm saying is, I think that's just not something that's culturally done commonly. Like Samina Pirzada before, she had actually a really great show with her husband. It's like 10, 15 years ago at least, easy. Um, she had a really good show. And even then, she didn't necessarily have people coming in and having that deeper conversation. It was just her and her husband taking a topic and like talking about it. And so it wasn't necessarily we're gonna interview someone else. What I'm trying to say is like I don't know if that's how interviews are done on that subcontinent, where it's like let's talk about the deeper thing, and that can make someone uncomfortable if they're not used to that.
Dude, that's what I was getting at when I was talking about nighttime shows. A person shows up and they do a promotional thing, and it's all entertainment, it's all blah, blah, blah. But then if you're going to go to Oprah show, you know what to expect.
Mm.
People are known what to expect. And even when they have these presidents go on certain shows, they know what to expect. I'm going to go to this in this current presidency that's going on. I'm going to go to this show, and this is the question they're going to ask me. They're going to love me. But I'm going to go over there. They're going to ask me really questions, which quote unquote tough questions. We're not going to go to that scene that happened. And they might get offended and just walk out because they're like, I don't like the questions that you're giving me. So when you go to a show, you know kind of sort of what to expect, what kind of things to expect. I don't know exactly what the deal was in this one. I mean, did he not know that he was going to be asked questions that are not shallow level? Like I don't know. I just at this point we have all these unknowns, but it's like the person who's interviewing you. Like, okay, what kind of interview I'm going to do? It's not like they just show up and have no agenda. These are very well organized
Hold
things.
on. Shahrukh Khan's life is so busy that I can totally
I
be like,
no,
I can
I
totally
disagree with
see.
that. Even the queen and kings in our current time, they know, oh, I have a schedule for 10 minutes. That's just basic. And I expect, Shahrukh Khan's team, whoever arranged this, they were like, okay, David Letterman, and he probably had to give, all right, this is what to expect from this interview, whatever. I mean, I don't know where we're going with this conversation right now. I'm just saying this is what I observed.
We're just taking it where it leads us.
Yeah, but I'm just saying what I observed about specifically from Shahrukh Khan, and I was just very surprised that I still don't know who he is. That's all. That was the point.
Yeah, I mean, I just, my point was, maybe, and one of the reason I kind of want to say I'm not defending Shahrukh Khan, or I guess I am in a sense, but what I'm defending is,
I never attacked him.
no, I understand what I'm
Just
defending
clarifying that
is,
for
in a
Shahrukh Khan
sense.
lovers out there. I never attacked him.
I mean, low key, it sounds like you're saying he can't go on a deeper level for whatever reason.
No, not that he can't. I said it again. He doesn't want to.
For whatever reason.
He doesn't want
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing, I think that's what I'm saying is like there is another way to look at it, right? There is definitely whether you want to or not, right? And then there is a whether you can or not. And then there's sometimes a very odd kind of miscommunication that happens when it's intercultural like this,
That didn't
especially.
happen. I'm saying you, if you watch this, that did not happen.
Let me finish my train of thought for a second with you. I'm trying to get somewhere. I promise. There's not just a repeat of what I've been trying to say. One time, my dad, he said, what did he say? He would always say this. He would always say this. Okay. So he said it in Urdu, or Hindi. Speakers would also be able to understand. He would. It was "Aaj kya padhaya?" That's what he would say, and I'd be like, nothing.
That's in English too. What did you do in school today?
No, he did not. Let me explain what I'm trying to say. So he said he would say in Urdu like not every day, but like very often he would say "Aaj kya padhaya," and I'd be like, nothing. I'm a student. I ain't no teacher. I didn't teach nothing.
I think you misunderstood that.
That's what I'm trying to say. And then kid you not, years later, I was like, Dad, why you always ask me that though? Like, I'm not a teacher. Of course I never taught anything. And he's like, it literally paused for a second and he kind of laughed. And he was like, I'm not asking you what you taught. I'm asking, what did your teacher teach you? Aaj kya padhaya? Like, what did your teacher teach you? And I felt so stupid, but I was like, then why didn't you specify? Aaj teacher ne kya padhaya? Yeah, aaj kya seekha? You know, like, what did you learn? What did the teacher teach you? But he would just leave it open-ended, like, aaj kya padhaya? What did you learn? It could be interpreted as, or what did they teach you? You know,
I knew immediately what he said.
I never knew that. And I felt so, literally years went by. And it was just a simple thing in that I just didn't understand, or like I didn't get that point of view. I have no idea why I missed it. But such a simple thing. And I would get really frustrated sometimes. Like, really, that's the question you're gonna ask. That's the one you're gonna ask every day. That what did I teach? Like, it makes zero sense to me. And so it was so frustrating, but also very funny in hindsight, you know? And so I wonder, that's what I mean. Ever since that has happened, after that, I began to really think about what he says to me. And I would ask so many questions trying to understand exactly what he's saying. Because sometimes
I can imagine what that was like because Desi parents don't want to be answering questions.
Yep, it was very interesting. But I wanted to make sure I'm understanding what he's really trying to say because I would miss it so many times. And it's not a language issue. I understand Urdu and he understands English. Like, there is no problem there. But it's the cultural nuance of the words, phrases, and questions that I would miss. And actually, he would miss. And we would get really frustrated with each other. And we didn't know why, other than you're not getting my point of view. But it was literally just that slight nuance was being missed. And it's over the course of a conversation, you know, it's not just one phrase or one word. It's like the whole, just kind of the subtleties of the conversation. And so that's what I'm trying to get at, is maybe there's a bit of that at play as well.
I don't know about that because, like, at one point you realized, wait a minute, this question is repeatedly asked.
So much, it took me years.
It took you years. At one point when you were old enough, you finally put two and two together. You're like, I think I'm missing something here. This dude is not 12.
No, true.
It's not the only time he's talked in English. It's not the only time he's
No.
left the country.
No.
His children study in the United States. You know what I mean? Like, it's not his first exposure. So I can't give him that. Oh, if you don't understand the question, okay, ask a further question too. Or like, is that what you mean? And there was a point where Dave Chapelle did that. Like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean by that? Ask a question so you understand because you're willing to answer. That comes from the willingness to be wanting to answer the questions properly.
Right.
But, he just didn't. That's how he wants to be. He just doesn't. And there is a culture in play. I agree with that. A little bit is because, like we mentioned, we don't really like to go deeper in our culture. But he just stayed so shallow, which I think was a little bit too much.
Right.
And that's why I was like, I wish I could know him a little bit more. I could be like, you know what? Shahrukh is a good person. He's like that. Like Dave Chappelle, I'm like, man, this guy is like, good thinker. He can speak well. I can't say anything about Shahrukh Khan. Nothing.
That's sad, man. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like I was throwing theories out there, but it seems like at the end of the day, Shah Rukh Khan wants to remain Shah Rukh
Yeah, you
Khan.
tried your best to. You tried your best. At one point, I was getting frustrated with you.
I was too because I was like, you're not getting my point.
No, but the thing is, we're not talking about a culture here. We're talking about one person who is such a big figure in his culture. And I think we're never, like I said, we're never really gonna get to know him, and he's okay with it. So I guess we have to as well. But people love him. He was like, I just like people love me. They just love me. He kept on saying that, like, love me. They just love me so much. They love me so much. And I was like,
They do.
yeah, maybe that's why. Because you don't talk a lot, and people are like, that's a good thing. They don't want to know more. They just want to love the character that you play, and that's it.
Yo, do you remember one of the actors? Oh man, I'm a disgrace to me right now. There was one actor that our mom used to really love in her youth.
A Pakistani actor?
Yeah. No, well, I don't know. Was he a Pakistani? Well, one of the actors that in the films, what would
Mm-hmm.
it be? 60s, 50s, 60s, and
Mm-hmm.
he ended up dying due to overdose. I think it was overdose. No, he drank himself to death, basically, and
Okay.
and it was. I think it was kind of a shock because no one really knew about his life. And then
Mm.
after there were stories and it kind of made a little bit more sense. The dude was going through some stuff and no one really knew. No one really knew. So maybe that's just part of, and he was a huge actor at that time as well. You know, one of the big ones. He,
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because it reminded me of something I saw recently. They were talking about Jackie Kennedy and how in almost all of her interviews after she was first lady, she had this poise and she would talk like the actresses will talk, like a certain, something they would add into that voice. So she would always sound like them. But they were like, when they were making that, the movie Jackie, and they wanted to know a little bit more about her as a person, they went to her earlier interviews where she wasn't that refined yet, where she wasn't the first lady yet. And they were able to grasp a little bit of who she is, compared to her post first lady interviews. So yes, and that was a time period, same time period, Kennedy time period. It's not now. Now our culture is very open, and people who are born then, like Oprah, obviously, and other people, we know a lot more about them now. But yeah, at that time, that was a culture. People were just always playing this thing. You didn't have Twitter, Instagram to be sharing your personal thoughts. You just showed up on a screen and in interviews.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about Kennedy, Jackie Kennedy. I don't know.
Yeah, I recently saw that. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Interesting.
There is definitely a history, or I don't know how else to say. She is a presence. She is known. She is a figure in American history. I know that for sure. And then definitely to talk about her poise and her grace and kind of the things that she's done. But what do you want to say?
That's the whole problem I have. Because we never got to know her. We never got to know what she is or was. All we can say is she dressed beautifully. She got the rose garden on the White House. She spoke really well. She was beautiful and graceful. That's all we have about this lady. I'm like, there is no way that's all that was to her. And so, like, we had previous Michelle Obama, right? I mean, she actually did something. She was like, I believe in this. And she tried her best to push her agenda as a first lady. And she did stuff. And she's now doing stuff too after her presidency. With our current president, his wife is just like that. You don't even know her. You have no
Yeah.
idea. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't use that platform to any good. Like, what does she really do? She talks about anti-bullying, which is like oxymoron. Like, it's not even so you know what I mean? Like, that's a tragedy. And that's kind of, maybe that's what I'm feeling about Shahrukh Khan too. It's like, we don't know you. You could be so much more. We could actually be like, man, Shahrukh Khan is a person that, oh yeah, I knew him. He was in my life making these movies and he did all this and he spoke so well. But we don't know. It's like Jackie Kennedy and what's her name now? It's like, it's just, yeah, somebody really cool that showed up on TV and did good stuff.
You know, I wonder if it's also because times are changing. The first ladies of the past were definitely not the same.
I don't
They're,
blame that. Yeah, I don't blame the time period. That was a reality. I think it was a
yeah.
tragedy then. But now it's conscious.
Yeah. And then, no, but I mean, oh, when was Jackie Kennedy? That wasn't 100 years ago, you know?
No,
That's
that was around the same time that you're mentioning. That was in their,
50s,
I don't know.
60s.
Yeah, around that time period. So that was
What?
how it was then.
Yeah, the Cold War. Yeah, exactly. She was around during that
Mm-hmm.
time. And then, but that's what I mean. Like this woman suffrage movement has is kind of recent, and that's part of it. That's part of it.
No, but also the culture is different. People
Yeah.
didn't used to want to, ask all these questions. I'm sure Oprah wouldn't have survived in the 50s if she started. They'd be like, "Oh, what's your issue here?" Not mentioning the race issue, but just generally, like she wouldn't have.
No.
And even I remember when we came to the States, what were those awful trashy shows that were big, Jerry Springer and all those things, shallow stupidity that was there. So now, recently, whatever, 20, 30 years, it has been, okay, a little bit more real and raw expressions and art and all that stuff. So we have seen that change. And some people have changed and some people have stayed the same if they're still
Right.
older. Yeah.
Right. But that's what I mean. What's Shah Khan's age right now?
The dude's old. I don't know,
Six,
but the dude's old.
50, 60?
He doesn't want to change. He wants to stay that way, and that's his choice. And that's just what it is. I'm
Mm.
glad Dave Chappelle isn't. I'm glad he's open.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm glad they're open. We get to know who they are, and and then we can make a conscious decision. Because some people, we get to know who they are, and we don't like it. We're like, oh my god, this person.
At least we know who they
At
are.
least you know.
Yeah.
At least you know.
The fact that you don't ever know who they are, that allows them to stay positive. I can see what you're saying about the first ladies. That was no one really knew who they were, and it's better that way. They're
Then
always viewed in a positive light, which is
yeah,
okay, non-confrontational, okay, living life, surviving in this world, positive.
they weren't. Women weren't given that privilege to be able to do the things that we call it privilege, but that's their right. They weren't given their rights.
Women were not allowed to be disliked.
Even now, if you look at Taylor Swift, she did a little documentary on Netflix, and I actually liked the way she spoke. She spoke well, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I kind of like her. I think she's pretty cool because now I know about her. And that's one thing they were like, oh, don't be political. Keep your politics to yourself. Don't say things. And she was like, you know what? I have all this. I have this platform. I have to say something that I really believe in, and I'm going to do it. So she did it, and she caused whatever she caused. And, now I know more about her. She got canceled for a while. Like, a lot of things happened to her as a consequence, but now she's back stronger than ever. So it's just that, you have potential. Now you can. The current first lady who's, inshallah, about to leave, she had all this chance to actually make a change, do something, use your platform. But she chose not to for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah, whether it be because of the times you grew up in or if it's a conscious choice, at the end of the day, that's what you've done.
Or just politics.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Only one person can be exposed, right? You don't want to expose two awful people. Let's just expose one awful person and we'll be okay with that. We can't handle two awful people.
I saw a headline. About the new first lady. So, or what is it, president-elect, first lady-elect? I don't know what you want.
Dr. Jill Biden.
Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. But she will be the first lady to have worked a job before being a first lady, they
That's
said.
That's not true.
To work a there was a particular it was a particular kind of job. You should look into the
Okay.
headline. It was a particular kind of
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, because I know Obama was a lawyer.
Oh yeah, and then Clinton was also a lawyer.
Yes, exactly. There's a lot of that going on there.
Yeah.
So I wonder what that was about. That's pretty cool. I actually liked it. I was like, oh, they call her Dr. Jill Biden. I was like, hey, you know what? You better call her Dr. Jill Biden.
They better continue calling her Dr. Biden.
Yeah, I think
is how
so. That's what
instead
her
of
handle
first
has.
lady. No, it should be Dr. Biden.
No, you can call her First Lady because that's also her title. But
First lady,
First Lady
Dr.
Dr. Jill Biden, First Lady Michelle Obama. I haven't even mentioned the current First Lady's name. Like I literally have slipped my mind. That's how unimportant
It's
she is in my
Melania.
opinion.
Melania.
Yes, her.
I thought this
So-
was a conscious choice, but if you just forgot, that's her name.
No, yeah. I think it was subconscious decision on my brain. We're talking about important people, and it's like not important. But we're actually heading into about an hour of our episode, and we rarely ever do that. So I think that we can end our show for today. It was a good conversation.
But again, I just want to share the fact that this one is an audio podcast. If you joined us in the middle, we do have video podcasts as well on YouTube, Matcha Talk. Throwing that out there. Leave a review, leave a comment. What's up?
Interesting. You said join in the middle like it's a live show.
Oh,
It
I
would be
do
really
that.
cool to do a live show one day. Maybe one day. We'll see.
Oh, I do that. I actually scrub and join in that. I'm like, ooh, this is an interesting conversation. And so I join in the middle a lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is the only, exactly like you said, this is our special podcast for our original OG podcast audience. I hope you guys really enjoyed this conversation. I know we talked a lot about things, but sometimes when you don't stay shallow, you can talk a lot about things. You really can.
Yeah, we had a good conversation. We had a really good conversation this week. And I hope we hear about what people thought about it and their ideas and why did Shahrukh Khan do this? I want to know.
Let me hear. If you've seen that Shahrukh Khan interview and Dave Chapelle interview, hop into Salam, say salams and let us know. Hop in over there, let us know what you think about those if you were to compare them, and if you think I had good insight into that interview or if you disagree with me, let me know.
Yeah, hashtag Matcha Talk. Let us know. Contact us. Reach out. We definitely want to hear from our worldwide audience. Looking at you, Qatar. I'm looking at you. What do y'all gotta say?
And Nigeria as well. Looking at you too.
All right.
I hope you guys have a beautiful week ahead, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for having matcha with us. Assalamu alaikum.